Welcome back to the URBiz Photocast by Zamm. I'm Dallas Mitchell with you every week discussing business photography and the business of photography. And as we always say, friends don't let friends shoot Pentax. I'm just kidding. Maybe 60%-ish. Stop thinking like a photographer and start thinking like a business person. That's what we do always say. Find us online at zamm.ca. That's zamm.ca. On the iTunes and other podcast portals, and you can find us on Stitcher at stitcher.com, or you can click through on the site. Also, we'd love to hear from you. Maybe you have some business questions, maybe you have some photography questions, maybe you have a question or comment about anything else. Hit us up on the website. Contact form is right in the show notes. All right, this week we are discussing stories. Stories sell. You need stories, and it's plural. Stories with an S. You need marketing stories, you need sales stories, you need personal stories, business stories. Even think about stories for your introduction and your networking. When you're networking particularly, not really stories, but instead of saying you're a photographer or you're a wedding photographer, think about how you enhance people's lives. Because that's really what you're doing with photography. It's a product, it's a non-essential product. So you're not really solving a problem unless you're a commercial photographer. So think about how you're affecting people's lives. So if you're a wedding photographer, you're a wedding expert, and you're making sure that people's memories are preserved. Start thinking along those lines. I'm in marketing, and if I say that I'm in marketing, that's kind of boring. So I'd much rather say that I help small businesses grow and generate new leads and better prospects by enhancing and improving touch points. That's a little bit more descriptive. People are going to remember that a little bit more. And it doesn't have to be spectacular. Just has to be more than boring. Most people are going to say, I'm Greg, or I'm Greg, and I'm in sales, or what have you, right? And the company name. It's kind of boring. So if you can do a little bit better, and then have stories about why you got into business, and why you got into your particular business, your motivations, things that you've noticed, or customer experience stories are really good. And have some of these stories chambered. And they can be brought up when it's appropriate with a client or with a networking while you're networking with other businesses. You should be thinking of storytelling in your marketing. And your marketing being any advertising, all your marketing materials, and your website, particularly your website, because you have a couple of different ways to communicate with people on your website. Effective marketing is uniting an idea with an emotion through a compelling story. Tim Hortons up here in Canada used to have commercials where they had a father taking his son to hockey practice, and it really hits that Canadian spirit of hockey and the waking up early morning and getting to the rink, and then there, while his kid's playing or practicing, the kid's father's father, the kid's grandfather, is there, and tells a whole story of this family bond, and the father now knows what his father went through getting him to hockey, and the grandfather gets to now watch his son take his son to hockey practice. Tells this whole story that every Canadian can relate to, and you hit that emotion, and they put their brand right in the middle of all that. Like Tim Hortons was there all along. They're drinking coffee. And you should be thinking storytelling through your blog. I see so many photographers, all they do with their blog is start blogging their photo shoots. This is a really ineffective way of blogging, and you're missing a huge opportunity, big opportunity, to tell stories and describe yourself. You could be giving people useful information about photo locations, or your perspective on photography, or technique, and make yourself look like an expert. Position yourself like an expert. And all along, you can be getting through marketing messaging about your ideas and your perspective and how you got into the business and why and your motivations, right? On your pages, and particularly your About Us page, be thinking about what your prospect or your potential client cares about. They don't care about awards and your associations and all your education and all your experience. Your experience is not a selling point. People don't care about it. If you're going to use that, if you're going to reference your awards and your experience, you really need to tie it to how people's lives are enhanced. What's in it for the client? It may make you feel good, and you might think that it makes you look all nice and polished and shiny, but they really don't care. What does that award show? It shows expertise. What does that mean for me as the client? Your expertise. How does that enhance my life? Just saying that you're an expert isn't good enough. And your About Us page should be more about stories and you and maybe how you got into the business or your motivations. It's a selling area or a marketing area that you can send effective marketing communication. These should not be online resumes. This should be about you and how you can improve people's lives. And in your sales process, you need stories. And these are where you're going to build stories so that you're selling yourself. Because let's be honest, if you're selling photography, you're selling pretty much the same product every other photographer is selling. Might be packaged a little bit different. Some might be a little bit better than others. People aren't really going to notice a whole lot of difference between really good photographers. So you're selling the same thing. When you start carpet bombing them with features and prices and packages, you're not selling them the product. You're making it very hard for them to make a decision because you look like everybody else. You need to be telling them stories about you. Build that story while they're sitting there with you. You can build a story about why you're in the business or how they're going to benefit from your service and they like you. You have a much better chance that they're going to purchase from you. The simple reason is people make purchasing decisions based on emotion. This is not an intellectual exercise. People purchase based on emotion, and they justify their purchase after the fact intellectually. Far too often, I see photographers trying to sell based on their package pricing and price and this and that. This is all secondary. People have to, before your package prices and your packages come into play, they have to make a decision to purchase from you. They need a reason. You need to set yourself apart from people, from your competition. That's where your stories come into. Your value lies in your stories, not your packages, not your pricing. Those packages aren't going to sell. Those packages are relevant and all that information is relevant once they make a decision to purchase from you. You need to sell yourself, which means you need to make yourself look different. And you have a unique story. That's the other thing. I talk to a lot of people and they say, I don't have stories. They don't have to be great stories. They just have to be stories. Set yourself apart. They have to be honest, and you have to build that with them in the consult when you're sitting there face to face with them. If you can build that story with them, you'll make that emotional connection with them. And that's what sells. That's your value. Once you make that emotional connection, you can sell. How do you make that emotional connection? Through your stories. Where's your value? Your stories. And part of the value of what you're offering is the difference between the client's pain and their gain, and what people care about, their emotions, their motives. Their pain is their fears. You value health and money because you fear sickness and poverty. Value lies in the contrast between the pain and the gain. The difference between having a nice baby photo and not is that the baby grows up. Baby's not baby for very long. So as baby photographers, one of the things that we sold that we used was they're only little once. You need to get those baby photos done and those baby portraits done because you never get this time back. They're never like that again. The pain and the fear is that it's not done properly and they don't have that when the child grows up. And the gain is when they have them. And that's what I provide. And that's the story. That's the narrative. That's the marketing narrative that we projected out there. Your story can bring value. If you're unable to bring value, then you're going to start justifying your price. And justifying your price is a very bad idea. It doesn't come from an honest place. It doesn't come from a good place. When you can demonstrate value to your client, you can demonstrate that they have to pay for it. You have value. You're not giving it away for free. When you have to justify price, it's very defensive. It comes from a negative place. I always see, and I hate this blog post that photographers always put up. It's that blog post about why wedding photographers cost so much. It's justifying price. You can talk about all your expenses. Your clients don't care. You can talk about all your experience. Your client doesn't care. You're talking about all the things that matter to you in that article, not what matters to them. Your professionalism doesn't matter to them. What your professionalism can do does matter to them, or should matter to them, or more specifically, you have to make them realize it matters to them. And you have to connect it with what matters to them. Their fears, their pain, what they're going to gain. You're going to have to figure out how people are going to make their decision. If it's price, a lot of people go into purchasing photography thinking it's price. And that's because they don't know. They see a lot of photographers. They see everybody looking the same. Everybody's talking about price and packages and talking about themselves and all their experience and their rewards. It makes it very hard for the consumer to make a decision. When consumers can't distinguish between product providers, they make decisions based on price. And when you're playing that game, you're in a race towards the bottom and you're cutting off the lifeblood of your business, your revenue. You need to add value so you can charge and not trade on price. And the way you do that is by displaying by showing value, and the way you show value is through your stories. People need to make a decision to purchase from you because they like you. People buy stuff from their friends, basically. And photography is no different than any other non-essential service. I pay $35 for a travel mug when I can get a $15 one that will do the same job. It'll keep my coffee hot. I do it because I want to. I like the feel of it. I like the look of it. It says something about me. I'm able to project that. Coffee's coffee until you pay a poor farmer in a developing country above market value. Then it's fair trade coffee. Not only does the price go up, but the margin goes up, and it's not a bad thing. And the consumer, it says something about them to themselves, and they get to project that as well. Trust me, if you have a friend that drinks fair trade coffee, who purchases fair trade coffee, there's no way you don't know about that. They tell everybody, and they won't shut up about it. They're able to project an image and a feeling about themselves that makes them feel good, and that's the value. It's the same coffee. If the fair trade coffee dealer does a product dump, it's still coffee. There's nothing that will distinguish themselves from Maxwell House or the other name brand coffees. Their value, the fair trade coffee value, lies in that story, lies in what it does. And it lies in the fact that there's a market and there's people who want to buy that coffee to do the right thing. And they get to project that to tell the world they're doing the right thing and possibly even encourage other people to do the right thing. That's the value of fair trade coffee. And that's why feature dumps won't work. When you're going to talk about your packages and your pricing and all the stuff that doesn't make any sense until they make a purchasing decision, you're not adding value. You need to show contrast. Your biggest competitor isn't other photographers. Your biggest competitor is no decision. When people have too many choices, they have a hard time making a decision. They default to price if they have to buy the service. If they don't have to buy the service, they might not buy the service. So if you're able to distinguish yourself, and they see 100 photographers and you're able to distinguish yourself, and there's only a handful of photographers in your market who can, then you're going to be one of 3 or 5 choices. That's a lot easier for somebody to make a decision. If you're going to talk about irrelevant stuff like your packages, your pricing, and justifying your price, you're going to look like the other 95% of photographers. That's a very saturated market, and there's no way for you to say to somebody, you should pick me. No effective way of sending that message. There's also another part of this. When people don't choose you, and they're not motivated to choose you, but they choose you anyways, and they have to buy somebody, but everybody's just saying the same thing, and it's the same thing, people are afraid of not making the purchase decision. So after the fact, they always think, if I went with the other guy, would have it been better? Or what if I saved money by going with somebody cheaper? Or if I spent a little bit more, would have I gotten something better? Because they were never really motivated for you. You were just either the last person they spoke to or the best of, slightly better than the other ones. But there's really no difference. When you pick one out of a bunch and there's no difference, you always think, could have you picked better? Because you're just drawing a name out of a hat, essentially. People are often disappointed with their purchases because of the conception they had going into it. And when they had no conception of what you can do or your value, then they're naturally going to think, could have I made a better decision? People are afraid of making a wrong decision. That's why looking like everybody else and not distinguishing yourself through your stories and adding that value through your stories. What should have been a really good customer experience and a service experience for a customer ends up being slightly disappointing or not as good as it could have been because they weren't motivated. They weren't excited by you. Doesn't mean you did anything wrong, but you didn't communicate effectively with them. And that can be a problem. And the nice thing is, not every photographer in your market is going to be telling stories. They're going to be talking about features and prices and packages and themselves and all their experience and all the stuff that doesn't matter. But you will be talking more about their lives and how it's going to impact their lives and what motivates them. And you're going to rise above the crowd. And that's the show for this week. If you liked it, share it on social media, tell a friend. You'll be sharing something that's useful and makes you look oh so good. If you have a question or comment about your business, hit us online at zamm.ca. And production music, courtesy of Incomtech.com. Links to them are in the show notes. See you on the flip side.